Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this brand new series here on the show. It's called Beyond the Vault. With me, of course, is Mr. Andy Scheckman. You can find his work at milesfranklin.com. Andy, welcome back to this brand new series.
JC,
How are you?
my brother, it's great to see you, my man. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to start this brand new weekly update series with you here entitled Beyond the Vault because we're getting more and more subscribers across all of our platforms, and more people are waking up to this crazy Ponzi scheme. They don't necessarily have the reflex or the know-all to put their finger on what's wrong, but they get that something's wrong and they want to inform themselves and they want to protect themselves here too. What is just around the corner? Speaking of that, Andy, before we go too far on some of the news items you and I want to discuss this week, are you getting the same type of sentiment from some of your buyers right now? Are you feeling a jitterness? What are your sales reps telling you right now? What's the market feel?
Yeah, and there's great uneasiness, and a common denominator is the inability to fully articulate it. It's kind of a tingling, a spidey sense, if you will. And I think a lot of it, JC, we talk a lot about what's happening to the dollar and what's happening outside the country, but what's happening inside the country, the destabilization, the lack of unity, the lawlessness, the issues with the Justice Department, with the open borders, with the elections, all of the things that are adding up are making people very uneasy. And I think it only adds fuel to the fire with the cost of living increasing and um, great uncertainty, and I just think that there are people that are very uneasy with what was traditionally safe stores of value. Um, People are concerned and putting food on the table, the cost of living increasing. They say inflation is coming down, yet it excludes not only food and energy and housing, but maybe the most expensive part of everyone's life, and that's taxes. 40% for the average working family of their money goes to taxes. That's not in the CPI. So as taxes have gone higher, will continue to move higher, as inflation is going higher, omitting the things that really are inflating. It's a situation where people's pocketbook is telling a different story than the official narrative. And it's starting, I think, to rub people in a way that has them very, very concerned. So, yeah, this is not about making money. It's more along the lines of preserving what they've worked so hard to obtain all their lives. And I think that is really a frustrating, scary realization for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Andy, on that. I saw that our buddy Bix is in the chat,
Hey,
roadtoruda.com,
Bixie.
guys, go check him out. He's saying, yeah, buy some pre 65 silver coinage before it becomes unobtainium.
We do have it on special right now at $3 over melt value, which is as low as I've seen it in 4 years.
And how do inventories look on that right now? Let me see if I can
I
bring
think
up
we
the
have about 60 or 70 bags or more in stock,
okay.
and we loaded up on them before we ran the special. And look, I was paying the public $8 or $9 over melt for the last 3 years, and
I
now we're
remember.
selling them at $3.
I remember.
It's one of these deals. It'll be look. It's a mystery to me why so few people really see. I mean, the people that we're talking to, they get it, even if they can't articulate it. But
Yeah.
much of the mainstream is just anesthetized to what's happening. And if Al Gore has his way, no one will ever know, because he says that democracy is under threat because citizens are no longer all reading the same news, and
Mhm.
that the algorithms that the governments can't control are threatening democracy.
Mhm.
So it's the people who are paying attention. But here again, we're not speaking to the masses. And I think that'll all change, because it's a mystery to me why, in this world that has me as a father more concerned than I've ever been in my life, why people don't see this. And
Right.
I guess you can only save the world, JC, one person at a time, starting with yourself and your immediate family, and then from there, we can do the best we can here on YouTube to wake up more people. But it's not an easy task. But when the awakening comes, yeah, what is flush and available in low premiums like that has the habit of changing, especially as we widen the scope of people who might be interested.
Yeah, that's when it becomes unobtainium really, really quick,
Mhm.
overnight, one might add.
Yeah, it does.
Andy, a lot of Canadian subscribers were asking us last week when you put up the special for your 90% constitutional silver or your junk silver on the United States side, if you guys had something similar in Canada. I spoke with mfbullion.ca earlier this morning, and they said no, here in Canada, very, very tight market on the junk silver, but they do have this special here for the Beyond Mystic audience today. These are the random year silver maple leaves here at 479 over spot Canadian. Really good price over on that as well. So if you guys are interested in that and you're on the Canadian side of the border, please do check out mfbullion.ca. Andy, one of the big news items to make the rounds here in the last little while is this. What's happening with the BRICS, but more specifically here, the UAE ditching the US dollar for oil trade. Now, you and I have been talking about that for quite some time. A lot of people are saying, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists. It's never going to happen. The US dollar is going to stay strong for the foreseeable future, as Janet Yellen was saying here when the BRICS were talking about their go back trading note. But yet, here we are, and the momentum continues. What does this really mean in your timeline when you look at things right now, and why you say, as a father, you're worried here about the future and the security of your children?
I think it's huge. JC, I've been talking about this for 3 years, and I've talked a lot about Saudi Arabia, how it fits into it. Well, Saudi Arabia, we watched how they, along with every other OPEC country, the UAE included, joined the Belt Road Initiative, the largest infrastructure project in human history. So every OPEC country is on the Belt Road. We watched them formally apply to the BRICS. We watched them sign a protective agreement with Russia, and it's been our protection of the Saudi kingdom that has given us the petrodollar, that has given us the dollar hegemony. We watched them join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the largest financial and military regional organization in the world. I will stress the word military. In essence, between the BRICS and the SCO, you now have them being protected by two of the three largest nuclear arsenals on the planet. And we watched them join the BRICS New Development Bank and tell the folks in Davos that, hey, we're open to listening to other countries who want to pay in other currencies. We're open to listening to it. Now, what the United Arab Emirates did is not as provocative as all of OPEC making this move, but let's talk about it for 1 second. You had 200 countries that were just in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai for this UN-sponsored summit on climate change.
Right.
And ironically, it was presided over by the chairman of the UAE state-owned oil company, who told the former president of Ireland that if we actually go green, you're going to send human civilization back to the caves. But what's interesting is that 2 days before 200 delegates from around the world show up in the UAE, they make the announcement, well, we're done taking dollars for oil. Now, is it a coincidence that they did this 2 days before 200 countries show up in the United Arab Emirates? They're the seventh largest producer of oil in the world. They're an OPEC member. They were just admitted to the BRICS alongside Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And even more interesting is what just happened a couple of days ago. An unannounced impromptu trip by Putin, who hasn't left the country more than once or twice in the last several years because of the bounty on his head, arrives in the United Arab Emirates, flanked by 4 Russian MiG fighter jets. Coincidence? Don't know. And then proceeds to go to Saudi Arabia right after, where the announcement is made that OPEC will cut 2.2 million barrels of oil per day. Coincidence? I don't know. To me, it's a shot across the bow, a massive shot across the bow. And I think it's something that should not be overlooked. And the timing of it and the announcement of it as 200 countries come there, this is not coincidental in my mind. It's something much bigger than that, and something that we will continue to see as time goes on, as this group becomes more united, a group that has received 20 formal applications, 20 more formal applications, and another 20 plus who have informally expressed interest. This is a growing coalition, and one that is gaining legitimacy and gaining strength. A larger military might than the West combined, a larger GDP, much larger swath of human population. This is something in crypto speak that is gaining, what's the word? Not acceptance. It's the word that everyone with crypto talks about. It has to gain.
Oh, I know what you mean. Not network effect, but
I
mass
forgot.
adoption. Mass adoption.
Adoption, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you're seeing is a
Yeah.
mass adoption and safety in numbers and a growing union where people were upset they didn't issue the gold-backed currency in August. But what they've done is instead they said to the finance ministers, go back to the drawing board, come back to the next meeting in Russia and tell us your findings. In the meantime, we'll all trade with one another in local currencies. And you see that happening in all of the deals that are being struck. These countries are trading with one another and not trading in dollars. This is something
Tectonic
that's
plates
not going
moving.
away. Yeah.
Tectonic plates moving
Yes.
below our
Yes.
feet. You're absolutely right. Let's switch gears and come back here to the United States for a moment, Andy. I wanted to have your take on this. And again, guys, this new Beyond the Vault series, we're trying to make it very condensed, maybe half an hour show, 40-minute show max, to really give you the news items of the week so that you can navigate all of this crazy stuff together. So let's move back here to the United States and look at Jerome Powell. Now it makes sense. This is on Zero Hedge, how Jerome Powell destroyed what little reputation the Fed had left. Of course, they're talking about this. The Fed holds rates steady, indicates 3 cuts coming in 2024. It appears that we're at the great pivot point. Is that the case, Andy? Why are the markets reacting right now?
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. I guess, the market has been expecting this for a very long time. And look, this last fiscal year, 2023, which just ended September 30th, the government took in 4.4 trillion in tax revenue and spent 6.3 trillion and continuing to spend unabated. And their spending habits are going out of control. So as rates go higher, not only does it make the cost of this ever increasing debt go higher, but the fragility of the system is hanging by a thread. And the higher the rates go, the greater strain it puts on the banking system, on the economy, on the commercial real estate, on everything. We're right at that moment right there. But you're right. I have felt that when the world realizes that the pivot is in, I mean, what incentive does the world have to sell us their goods for a depreciating currency? You go to shadowstats.com, John Williams, who will give you a better reflection of what inflation really is. The dollar's losing between 7 and 10% per year in purchasing power. And so when the realization by the world is that they're never going to normalize their balance sheet, they will always choose inflation over austerity. At some point, the mass adoption of these alternative forms of settlement, like the BRICS, I think will start to really gain traction, and you will see,
or what Jim Willie calls escape velocity or overdrive.
Yes,
yeah,
and it goes the other direction in dollars, where people just do not have an incentive to hold a massively depreciating currency,
right.
and it's a very scary point we're at right here, kind of the Rubicon, if you will.
Right. Let's go to Argentina very quickly. They just announced the other day that they were devaluating the Argentine pesos as a shock therapy, quote unquote, plan begins. Is that coming to a country near you, Andy? What do you think?
Well, you don't have to, you can make the statement that all currencies without fail have gone to zero without exception forever. You go back to 1720-ish. Voltaire said that paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value, zero, always. And so this is another example of it. This is what would happen. This is what it looks like when a currency has no demand. And, that's a currency that is inflating away, where the value is just disappearing. And that's something that let's hope we don't see here in the United States. But, it's something certainly that we could expect to see if something were to rise to challenge the dollar for its supremacy. People don't want it. The value starts to collapse. And, this is what has happened throughout all of history. Every single time, there has never been a currency ever that has not eventually gone to zero. And I think the US dollar will be no exception. The Argentine peso certainly is on that list. And it's interesting because Argentina was one of the 6 countries that was admitted to the BRICS. And then with the new administration that you have to kind of look at cross-eyed, well, they said we're going to decline the invitation to the BRICS and buddy up with the West. So I don't know. It's just more, I think, of history proving to be correct, and Voltaire proving to be correct, that if you hold your your wealth in a currency, and you end up seeing it lose value little by little by little, and you get to a moment like that where it goes hockey stick all at once. And it's not a good omen, I think, either for potentially what you could see in the Western currencies as they are beginning to lose credibility across the globe and pivoting away from making the tough decisions, getting your balance sheet in order and doing those things is something that will only exacerbate and accelerate the ultimate demise of the dollar little by little by little until we get that all at once moment. Hopefully not.
You just mentioned credibility. I attribute that also to the confidence in the US dollars. I was having a dinner with friends a couple of weeks ago, and one of the person at the table was saying, "Oh, JC, don't worry. The US dollar, it's backed by the US economy." I'm like, really? In my view, the US dollar is backed by three things. One, it's military. Two, the ability to impose sanctions on people who don't want to use the dollar. And three, the petrodollar, creating artificial demand for the dollar. All three of those are on the wane in a big, big, big way. The sanctions, of course, now with the BRICS introducing their own currencies, their own trade mechanisms, the military losing their tail in Afghanistan. You and I did a show on that last year or the year before. And of course, the petrodollar, now everybody's ditching it. And of course, the architect of it, Kissinger, just died last week.
Well,
am I wrong,
let me say
Andy?
one
Or is the
quick
US
thing.
dollar, or is the US economy, as it's being proposed here, is what's backing the strength of the US dollar?
Well, one quick thing you said, the military. So look, the national debt is growing so fast that according to the Congressional Budget Office, that interest on the debt plus mandatory entitlement spending, food stamps and Social Security and all these things, it will consume 100% of the federal tax revenue within 7 years by 2031. This is the U.S. government saying that. So think about it this way. That means in 7 years, the entire discretionary budget of the U.S., including the military, will have to be borrowed. So how hard is it for people to see a point where the United States continues to be the most dominant economic, political, and military power in the world when it has to borrow money to fund its military? And that's just 7 years away. So this will start to accelerate as far as I'm concerned. And it's been a slow roll. And you can see it accelerating now with something like the UAE saying, yeah, we're going to go a different direction. Safety in numbers is what this coalition represents against the West that seems to be addicted to spending. And this is something that a country in decline will continue to remain in decline until we start to make responsible decisions. And we are not making responsible decisions. We're doing everything but that, and including incentivizing the world to move away from the petrodollar. After all, we signed an executive order to go green, and we weaponize the dollar, and we've done all of these things to make the world say, well, maybe we should go a different direction. It will only accelerate the problems, and it's a scary thing.
Last week, or earlier this week, actually, I had the privilege of having another interview with David Morgan, the silver guru himself. And we were talking about that spike in gold the week previous that hit 21.40 and why perhaps something was jarring the markets on that day. So if you guys haven't seen this episode on Rumble, please do go check it out. Really fascinating stuff. But just yesterday also, we're having that same kind of weird activity. Again, a lot of pressure. This was Alistair McLeod talking about gold futures, suggesting here that liquidity was very restricted. And again, on that same day too, this was me posting this, the 24-hour spot of silver. Something happened. What do you think is happening there too? In my interview with Dave, he suggested that there's so much pressure right now, and perhaps the controllers are using these little shunts, so to speak, to redirect some of the energy, let the bit run, I think is what he said, for a bit, and then tamp it back down. Is that what's happening, or are we seeing constant pressure perhaps from bigger institutions realizing that, Powell is on the last leg here of the US dollar. We're at that pivot point, and people are starting to look at alternatives in a bigger way, and that's messing up perhaps some of the algorithms holding silver and gold down. What's your thought?
You can only manipulate a market over an extended period of time by pushing in the direction that it's going. David is one of my dear friends, and I love him like a brother, and he's a smart man. My take on it would be you have tremendous central bank buying, Asian buying, Turkey buying, Poland buying, all of the governments around the world are buying. And on that Sunday night where gold popped up through 2100, it was big Asian buying. And then we had the FOMC meeting coming, and you could almost guarantee, I mean, it's rinse, wash, and repeat for as long as I can remember. And I said publicly, over the last few days that this is to be expected. This retracement, which just hit 50% and then popped up. I mean, you couldn't draw it up any better from a technical standpoint, where the gain up to 2100 has retracted by 50%, and here it is off to the races again. But I said publicly that it will do this the minute Powell says he's not going to raise rates this time. And the market is so stupidly reactionary. This is because so much of it is run by traders rather than by people who understand the macro fundamentals. But, and this is what they did. They knock it, that it goes up, and they go, oh, crap, we got the FOMC meeting, and Powell speaking, the world is shining a light on us. We better knock down the price of gold. And they did that leading up to the meeting. He says, we're not going to raise rates, and bang, it goes straight up again. And this is what we will continue to see: 2 steps up, 1 step back. And it's, I think, we're at a range right now where if we see it bust through that last quick peak of 2100 and change, I mean, it in theory could be certainly off to the races, but it will not be something that is going to be a smooth, non-volatile run. It will be challenged every step of the way. But yeah, with both gold and silver, every time you see a pullback, realizing that the central banks are massively, massively accumulating both. India bought 60 million ounces of silver in the month of October. So China bought 10 million ounces. We see Turkey loading up on silver, loading up on gold. The world, the most well-informed traders, not just the wealthiest, but the most well-informed, they don't care what's going on with the price. They continue to gobble it up using the suppression of the Western market, their idiocy, to stand for delivery. And so they're beating us at our own game. And instead of, this is something I don't think that the West ever really factored into their thinking. And that is, if we suppress the price of gold to make our system seem stronger than it is, well, what happens if everyone stands for delivery? And that's what you see happening across the globe. So the only reason these countries aren't bitching about it is because they're in accumulation phase. And at some point, I think the COMEX and the LBMA will be rendered obsolete, because a fractionalized, manipulated, rehypothecated system is crap. And it will move to the Shanghai Gold Exchange or the Moscow Exchange or the exchange in Dubai, which will be more along the lines of cash and carry and won't be dominated by futures prices, but by the actual demand for the physical metal itself.
Let's go into silver for a second here. Let me see if I can bring this up for the audience. I interviewed Marty Hibbs from the Market Oracle the other day. This is a new series here also called Beyond the Charts. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. We're doing TA for the audience members who are interested in that. He was looking at silver in a big way here. And interestingly enough, what he's picking up on the chart is also what Clefai was picking up just recently in his Webbot data reports, suggesting that we could hit somewhere between 35 and 50 in silver in the short term. Here, Marty was explaining the cup and handle formation in silver. And as you can see here from the charts, he's looking at that pink box on the top here. Let me see if I can bring that up on the screen for you guys there. Somewhere around 35. Now, there's a couple of scenarios to play that out. What do you think on that? Is that what's happening right now? Is that feasible right now that we would hit 35 and maybe even 50, as Clefai was suggesting, that because there's no resistance or very little of it between 35 and 50, that we can get there really, really fast? Andy?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if silver were to be set free for where it really should be, it would be multiples. I mean, look, if you realize that forget about the mining ratio, which is 7-1. If you realize the average price ratio for the last 150 years has been roughly 42-1, which is still 6 times higher than it's coming out of the ground at. So if we look at gold right now and we see gold at, call it $2,032, and we divide by 42, which would be very conservative, that's $48 an ounce. So that would just be the average of the past 100 plus years in a world that is anything but average, in an asset that there are very little, if any, assets on the planet that are selling for half of what their peak was in 1980, and an asset that is depleting in nature and increasing in demand in so many areas: monetary demand, industrial demand, military demand. There's 500 ounces in the tip of every Tomahawk cruise missile, and every time you turn on the TV, there are more missiles being fired. So when you talk about the demand for silver, it's increasing. And when you talk about the mineable supply of silver, it's decreasing down to 7-1 from 16 to 1 for 5,000 years. And that's because it's found in nature, like your skin is epidermis. Silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, right near the surface. The big deposits were extracted years ago.
Yeah.
And that's why only 35% of the silver that is mined comes from companies that are mining silver. The rest of it is byproduct and recycling. And, it's a situation where here again, we're going to have several 100 million ounce shortfall between supply and demand. The fundamentals could not be better. Decreasing supply, increasing demand, suppressed price, cup and handle formation, a coiled spring. I mean, yes, it might be the most compelling investment on the planet. And I say that to you, trying every single way to poke holes in that statement. And I mean it. Bix is right. David Morgan is right. They're right. And you will see prices go much higher. Ultimately, when you base your decisions on mathematics, economics, and sprinkle some logic on it, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
May not happen how or when, but ultimately, yes, silver will go higher. As a statement, I would say it is the trade of a generation. And I mean that in the bottom of my heart, in my soul. It is the trade of a generation.
To the silver manipulators out there, I think Cliff High would say, you can ignore reality all you want, but you can't ignore the consequences of having ignored reality.
Right.
And that goes also for the silver stackers. At some point,
well, that's
you will
like
find yourself
smoking.
on the right
That's
side
like
of
smoking 4 packs of cigs a day. Yeah, you can ignore this, but you can't ignore the reality of it. It's true. And that's a very astute statement by Cliff.
Yeah. Let's get into gold a little bit. Cliff sent me something that somebody sent him, and I'm still looking for the attribution here. But at any rate, I thought I'd bring it up for conversation today. They're talking about these two prior bull markets in gold. And for a technical model, we turn to these two prior bull markets here in gold to compare those to the performance of the current bull market. So here they're explaining, whoever the author of this is, that in the first bull market here from 71 to 80, gold rose from $35 to $800 per ounce. And then again in 99 to 2011, rose from 250 to 1900 per ounce, yada, yada, yada. And we use that same math to extrapolate here, perhaps what this bull market could look like. And here they're saying that using those same type of parameters here, we could be looking at a $15,000 per ounce gold here by 2026 in August. Does that even make sense? In the conversations you and I had with Bill Holter, we talked about many times how Jim Sinclair had actually accurately predicted the rise from $35 to $800 per ounce way back when, and how Jim Sinclair right now, just doing the math on the back of a napkin, is suggesting that we're closer probably to $90,000 or $95,000 per ounce, just if you count all the money printing that has occurred and the eventual accounting that gold always does. What's your take on this analysis here of these last two prior bull markets and how it compares to the one that we're just entering now, Andy?
Well, yeah, I mean, in 1971 we left the gold standard, and that's what happens when you take real money out of the currency. And yeah, and I watched very closely the bull run from 1999 to 2011, where it rose 10, 11, 12% unabated every single year. And it's real. What even I think would add fuel to the fire now is, and the difference between what we saw over this whole period back then, in 2000 and I don't know, 6, 7, 8, you had Gordon Brown, the head of the Bank of England, sell the majority, if not all, of their gold. Bottom ticked. It actually would have been even earlier, 2002 or 3. But during these periods of time, the central banks were net sellers of gold, and now they're all massively accumulating it. You had the head of the Dutch National Bank basically publicly say that we're preparing for a revaluation in gold. Gold is held in all the central bank balance sheets in an account called the gold revaluation account. And so the main difference here, I believe, is that we are transitioning to a system, as Zoltan Pozsar calls it, one that will be called Bretton Woods 3, a system that will be, one backed by transparency and commodities. And what is gold but the only other tier 1 reserve asset on the planet? The only other one. BIS reclassified it as that. And when you take a step back and say, okay, the central banks started repatriating their gold in 2017 from the Bank of England and the New York Fed. After years of selling it, they've been selling net sellers of gold all the way up from 11 to 17, and maybe even before that. And now they start repatriating, and in 2018, they go on a massive buying spree where the banks of Eastern Europe who repatriated, the Bundesbank, the Dutch National Bank, the Austrian National Bank, the Polish Bank, the Bank of Hungary, the Bank of Turkey, the Czech National Bank, they all started massively accumulating gold, where in 18, those numbers were combined. Those countries bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined, and it has not stopped. So they use the suppression of the Western market to run cover for their de-dollarization and their methodical purchase of gold, not too fast to cut off their nose to spite their face, just slowly enough to boil the frog, turn up the heat until the frog boils and falls asleep. And that's exactly what has happened. Now we see an acceleration over the last year and a half, 2 years. The central banks have bought more gold than at any time in history using the Western suppression. So when it is set free and maybe it is used to revalue, to peg to a new system where the world says, look, you guys have screwed the value of the dollar so horribly, we do not trust governments and promises anymore. Yeah. That's where blockchain and the only other tier one asset in the world, gold, comes into play. They will peg, and I've been saying this since 2019, they will peg gold to a blockchain, and it won't be redeemable, because de Gaulle from France proved that redeemable currencies or convertible currencies convert. But they will show the veracity and the mutability of it on a distributed ledger for the whole world to see and have it audited and have it done the right way. Now, you add that to the mix where the biggest money in the world is slowly accumulating it to back a new system. And then you see all the states here in the United States that are saying, well, gold and silver coins minted by a sovereign government can be used for all debts, public and private, including paying your property taxes. You are seeing big money and big interest slowly turn up the heat with gold and silver. So this time, when the system breaks, yeah, I think you could see it. The one truism I can tell you after 33, almost 34 years in finance is bull markets go higher than anyone ever thinks possible, and bear markets fall further than anyone thinks possible. And I'll evidence that by when I started this industry, the Dow Jones was 2,100, and I watched it go up 18 times, and no one would have thought that was possible. Right. The guy who said it was going to 10,000 was laughed off the stage in the first show I went to. And the Nikkei at that same time was nearly 40,000. And Japan made everything better with a motherboard and an engine, and they owned half of the U.S., Rockefeller Center and casinos in Vegas and all this stuff, and everything flip-flopped. And they're still not back to where they were then. So when you talk about how high this will go, the one thing that this offers that the other ones didn't is the biggest, most sophisticated, well-funded traders on the globe are buying the crap out of it. And that will accelerate once it starts to really move. So yeah, I think it'll go higher than anyone thinks possible. And like Sinclair said, it'll never come back down, because at that level, if you raise it high enough, the gold that is held by these central banks will make their balance sheet whole. Their assets and liabilities will equal out. That's the revaluation premise. And you peg it to a new system, it'll never come back down.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. You just mentioned the blockchain. Guys, if you're interested in those conversations, please join me here. I also rebooted the Beyond Crypto Roundtable with Litecoin Lisa and Jason 4. That was Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. Fabulous conversation here about the future of the blockchain and how that is also included here in part and parcel of this great reset that we find ourselves in. Jay, he says, I'm at work, but I'm listening. This is great, JC. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate that. And on the Rumble chat, I haven't forgotten you guys also. Fierce and Limitless says, Andy is so accurate in his analysis and a pleasure to listen to. I agree. Your pleasure.
Thank you very, very much. And someone else in there said that the U.S. economy or whatnot is a game of Jenga. It is. And I will tell you that a very big Jenga piece came out with the UAE saying we're not going to take dollars for oil anymore. And it is little by little by little. That's logarithmic decay. That's my whole thesis. Swinging at the tree with an axe, little by little by little by little by little by little by little, and bang, it all goes. Well, where are we on this logarithmic decay? How far away before the last piece of Jenga comes out? It's true. And you have to take a step back and look at it and see the pieces not in and of themselves, like the countries that are joining the BRICS, the new 20, most of them are inconsequential in and of themselves, like Venezuela. Venezuela has 16% of the world's known oil reserves, but of themselves, oh, who cares? It's Venezuela. But you keep adding more and more and more and more of these resource-rich countries to a safety and number, huge military presence organization, and all of a sudden it does the Jenga tower starts to tip. And I think that's a spot on analogy.
We're getting close. What would they say? Slowly at first, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Andy,
that's how Hemingway went broke. That's right.
exactly. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time today. Let's go back here to the specials for this week. 90% constitutional silver on sale here at $3 over a spot. You guys can find that at beyondmystic.net/silver. You've also included the 1 ounce silver eagles here. These are the 2023s. Still have a lot of these in inventory.
We have both 2023s and back dates. It's funny, a lot of the companies out there sell the sealed mint boxes of different dates for a lot more money. We don't. And so, yes, we do have quite a few in stock, and a whole bunch coming to me this week as well. So, yeah, I have a lot more than I thought I would have leading into the end of the year, and that's why I'm offering them on special at what I think is as pretty darn close to as competitive as price or better than you'll find in almost every retail organization in the country.
Absolutely, I agree. So, guys, check it out at beyondmystic.net/silver. That's if you're on the US side of the equation. And if you're Canadian, please do go check out mfbullion.ca. There you'll see the weekly special here for the silver maples at $4.79 over spot. These are the random year coins here on special for you guys. Thank you so much, Andy, for that. And last words of wisdom before we go. Crazy times ahead of us still. What do you tell your people here as you're doing your podcast? And what do you tell your family and friends also on how to prepare for all of this?
I'll say it to you this way. The best advice I've ever been given in my life came from my father, and it was the greatest gift that I was ever given by my father. When we started this company together 34 years ago this February, I tell all my employees the exact same thing. You must let the laws of compounding work for you instead of against you. You must take care of your own house first. And that is be methodical, just like anything, like working out or dieting or whatever it is that you need to do. You have to start somewhere and you have to be regimented. For me, that is buying something for yourself every 2 weeks or every time you get paid. I don't care if it's 1 ounce of silver from, as Bick says, start a relationship with your local coin shop. It's a great idea, but pay yourself first. And I think that's really very, very, very important. The best advice I can give people is that this is real. And if you are fully invested in dollars and have all your assets in dollars, imagine if they were all in Argentine pesos, you will become a victim. And so you do not what is being said. Don't listen to the rhetoric, but what is being done. The biggest, most well-funded, well-informed traders on the globe are using the manipulation of the Western markets, which are heavily manipulated, where the futures markets are controlling the price, the tail controlling the dog. Use it to your advantage the way they are and add to your stack, get money out of the system, and hope to God you never need to use it. And if you do, maybe it's for a hell of an opportunity. Maybe not. Maybe it's an emergency like most people think about, but there are opportunities too. And if not, you leave a legacy for your family. Pay yourself first and be regimented about it. That's the best advice I can give anyone in a period of time where it seems that the dollar is getting very close to its end days, at least in terms of being the sole settlement currency for oil. And to see the 7th largest producer of oil in the world, OPEC, who just joined the BRICS, make this statement, now that's not something I would overlook. And I think we're getting late in the day. So pay yourself first, be regimented. And that's the best advice I could give anyone.
Great advice. Thank you. Andy Carol says, wow, great show, JC. I've learned so much from you. And Andy, thank you, Carol. And Carla says, definitely need to get more silver this month. Thank you, JC and Andy. Well, thank you, Carla, for that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And please let us know in the live chat if you like this format, this new format, this weekly updates format for you guys. Let us know perhaps what items in the news media you want us to cover for the next week episode. And until such time, this was the Beyond the Vault with Mr. Andy Schekman. I love you guys. Have a great day. And we'll see you tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern for the special blackout episode on Rumble. Take care, guys. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.